We'll get rolling. It being 7 p.m. on Wednesday, October 18th, 2023, we'll begin tonight's Select Board meeting. First item on the agenda is the public comment. Is there anyone here for public comment? There being none. The next item on the agenda, review of minutes for September 20th, 2023. What is the pleasure of the board?
I move to approve the minutes for September 20th, 2023.
I'll second.
Any discussion? There being none, all in favor? Aye. The next item on the agenda is the Community and Economic Development Director.
Good evening, everyone. I believe we have two items on our agenda, first being the ARPA Small Business Assistance Program, and the second being surplus properties. On the ARPA Small Business Program, you may recall we have two programs, each funded at $150,000. First of these is the Safety Net Program, which provides grants in two tiers, either $1,500 or up to $10,000 to address business loss. Difference between the two programs is the magnitude of loss. And the second is the Growth and Recovery Program, which intends to leverage private investment for businesses in affected industries that wish to modify or alter their premises or delivery of services as a response to COVID. I'll begin with the Safety Net Program. That application was open online until last Friday. We received 16 applications. I believe there's hopefully there's something in your packet there. If not, I have them printed out here. We released 16 applications for a total demand of $135,228. There may be one other straggling application coming in. The business owner communicated with me before we closed the portal. Two others, in fact. And I agreed to hold it open for them for an additional week. So now that we've received these, now that we understand the magnitude of demand and that the available resources at least meets the magnitude of demand, the review committee, which is composed of 3 members, a banker, an attorney, and myself, will review these applications, review the supporting documentations, and make recommendations for award. At which point, we can see what funds, if any, are left, and come to your board to either reopen an application round, would be my recommendation, or to close the program and return the funds to the town. The Growth and Recovery Program, that application is open until the end of this month. I have had conversations in earnest with 2 businesses, although nothing has been received. That program for the preliminary round really is just an expression of interest, a letter of interest describing what they would think of doing and kind of a rough estimate of cost. That program will have a much longer gestation period just for the necessity of developing drawings and responsible budgeting and all those kinds of things, cost estimating, all those kinds of things. But that program is still open, and if anyone is interested, they can find more information online or they can contact me directly in the office.
Any questions?
Mr. Chair?
Yes.
Just a couple thoughts. So the Small Business Safety Net Program, there was 150 reserved for that, and
Yep.
with applications, we're at 135. So, right, so that makes sense. So you're saying we'll close it, evaluate the applications, because to your point, we don't want to take on a lot more applications if if this 135 is legit, we're kind of like close to the end of exhausting that
Exactly.
amount. Okay, that makes sense. So what, just remind me, and people that might be watching, so what are because I forget sometimes too, what were the different groups of, there was this and then there was the other program that you were just referring to?
Which is the Growth and Recovery Program.
Growth recovery. Now how much was set aside for that one?
$150,000.
Okay, and what was just remind me, what was the maximum amount allowable under that one? Was that the one that?
Is $40,000, although the guidelines say that we would consider requests for additional funding on a case-by-case basis.
Okay, all right.
And minimum request is $10,000.
Okay, minimum 10. And so that one, and was there a third one or was it just those 2?
Just those 2.
Okay, all right. All right. So, all right, not a lot of responses on that one, but I think that one, the one with the 40,000 max, there was it was a more of an uphill climb, for lack of a better term, than the other, like there was a lot more you had to prove, it was a little bit more,
No, it's a different program. I guess the chief distinguishing differences between the two is that the growth and recovery is restricted to businesses that have been defined by the Department of Treasury as affected within an affected industry.
okay,
Those are travel, tourism, and hospitality. And the growth and recovery, the safety net program is open to any business in town that can demonstrate a loss.
okay.
And the other chief distinguishing is that the safety net is a straight out grant.
Okay.
The other program can be a grant or along with leaning towards grants, but there's a match required.
Okay, that's fine. And can you just take a moment, because I was approached a couple times with what I thought was kind of a legitimate question about, you know, some of these businesses have been waiting a while for this COVID money, and some businesses, they kind of couldn't wait any longer. They had to spend some of their own money to reinvest into their business. And the argument that was made to me was, you know, I was kind of waiting for assistance and I had to go forward myself with my own money. And now that I've done that, now I'm not eligible for the growth and recovery program because that project, you know, I've already kind of spent the money and that project's over. And so what I committed to at least have a conversation about is, would it be possible for us to have some sort of a look back period, you know, whether it's 3 months, 6 months, whatever we decided. And I just had a chance to catch up with you briefly before the meeting, and I think you were just explain so that everyone can be on the same page. That's the way that these funds are being released. You're saying that that's not even a possibility. It's not like legal the way that.
Based on my understanding, but basically I should say that the guidelines were formulated with regard to longstanding federal requirements for the use of federal funds on programs like this. And I won't bore you with the numbers, but it's 24 CFR 570 and Circular, I think, A89, which govern how subgrantees like us distribute funds. And if it's a matching program, our program doesn't have to be a matching program. If it's a matching program, what qualifies as a match, matching funds, is prescribed. And one of the chief prescriptions is that funds that have been expended prior to the execution of an assistance agreement are not eligible to count as matching funds. And I think you can understand how that could work, because I think when these regulations were promulgated in the 70s, I mean, the opportunity for abuse of a system where you said, I already paid for that and need you to give me money for that. Well, how much did you pay? Well, here, I'll show you. And just, you know, it is vulnerable to abuse. So certain expenses, most expenses cannot be incurred prior to entering into an assistance agreement if it's a matching fund.
Okay.
So that's based on my understanding of the rules that govern the use of federal funds. I'm not saying that that's exhaustive. I can show you that I did look at that federal circular today, and the range of departments to which it applies is pretty extensive, but it's not exhaustive.
Okay.
If we could do that, I'd have to do more research.
Okay.
The other thing I could say, though, and why I think it was part of our impulse to make these matching funds was to also stimulate private investment in these businesses. It doesn't have to be a match program. It could be a grant program. The only thing it has to be is consistently applied.
Okay. So if it were a grant program instead of a match program, we would have a little bit more flexibility in this regard?
We would, although we would be setting aside, I think, which one of our other desires was that businesses have a skin in the game, so to speak.
Right.
And that, and if we were to not do that, I think we would have to take a step back to be much more rigorous in evaluating the feasibility of a proposed modification. Quite frankly, if you can do something for nothing, the rigor of kind of planning, the business planning and all those kinds of things, I think the temptation to be more lax would be there. So based on my understanding of the federal regulations, if it governs ARPA funds the way it governs all other federal funds, that these would be the restrictions that would be in place. That said, it doesn't need to be a match program. If you eliminate the match, then you eliminate the determinations of what qualifies as a match.
Okay. And I'll pose this question to the board. Would anyone be against if I just had some conversations with Phil about just exploring if there is an opportunity to expand this program, or is everyone satisfied with just the way it is right now? I thought it was.
I have no opposition to that.
I just would be curious to find out if it's even possible. I do think that, and we would have to discuss, like to Phil's point, if, I understand you don't want people taking advantage of the situation, so we can discuss kind of a robust approval process for it, but I would be interested. I am trying to be fair. I mean, I know we're all trying to do what we can, but we are a little bit late getting this money out, in my opinion, to the businesses. And if some of them felt like they had to take matters into their own hands, I think we should still try to do something to help them out, because if this growth and recovery program was intended to entice people to kind of invest in their own business, and if some businesses just couldn't wait any longer and just did it themselves, and now they're like excluded from any of this COVID relief money, I'd like to think of a way that we can possibly still try to help them out so they're not on the outside looking in and they don't get penalized just because they did the very thing that this program is actually intended to entice.
Mr. Chairman?
Sure.
Are you then indicating that you want to stop this business safety net program that we're in?
The safety net's entirely apart from what
Okay,
we're
so
talking
this
about. We're talking presumably, because there's no match in the safety net program. We're talking only about the growth and recovery.
Okay, so we were talking 150, so if your request, and you don't know who's approved and who isn't, so that 135 could turn out being 60,000.
Exactly right.
Right.
Exactly right.
So now you're not stopping this?
No, that's kind of a separate thing. What I think we should do is find out if that 135, perhaps 145, is real, or if by the time we do the evaluations, we still have $50,000 left, that kind of a thing.
Well, that's what I'm saying.
Yeah.
I think you need to conclude what you're doing right now to see where financially what you have left.
We will in that
And
program.
then you can aggressively look into a different program. But, I mean, it just seems like you're going into two different ways instead of concluding one.
Well,
Right.
they are two different programs, but they're running on parallel tracks. So just one's an express train and one's a local. One goes slow and one goes fast. And so what Eddie's talking about is the local, the slow-moving program, what our baseline program guidelines are. Whether is it a match or is it a grant? I think is that a fair characterization?
Yeah, I mean, my question was like, is it possible to do a look back? And if the match makes it impossible to do the look back, then yeah, I would be interested in looking at the options of if we modified it to a portion of it to be a grant.
Yeah, I think we're thinking of it all as a grant. It's just that we want to see, I think we've wanted to see demonstration of private investment going along with the public fund.
Understood.
So just to revisit what Mary Rose had said, so the safety net program, the select board already approved that 150,000, that's the 135
Yeah.
that has come in. And then the business growth and recovery grant program, that was an additional request of 150,000. So those two programs are.
Yeah, those are both approved programs.
Exactly, so they're both separated, so then this next year on the look back would be part of the growth and recovery grant program, right? The discussion related to that.
Yeah. Right. And there's, we can talk about a couple things. One thing we might want to do is want to have a discussion with Mr. Vault, but a couple of things come to mind. We could reduce the 50-50 percentage. We can't give any credit. It's not a grant program in that we're giving you cash. We're giving you funding for a capital project. So the capital project still has to proceed for us to make any contribution to it. But if it's a matter of maybe changing the percentages, we could be open to that. My advice would be, because we published the program under these guidelines with the deadline for submittal expressions of interest on, I think, October 29th. Is that a week from Friday? then my recommendation would be that we carry these through to the end of that, see where we are, because my strong suspicion is that we're not going to have requests in excess of the funds. And then if we need to roll it out again with new guidelines, do so. If you remember when we did the sign and facade programs funded by CDBG a few years ago, we had to revise that thing over and over again to get the money out. I think this was a good starting point, but if we want to revisit our guidelines moving forward, we can.
Okay, yeah, that's fine with me. My only, last question, Phil, can you just go over, so I know we had the article in the item advertising it. You guys, can you just kind of refresh us on like what steps we've taken to get the word out? I believe you also you made some phone calls to businesses that you thought were.
That was on the Growth and Recovery Program.
Okay.
On the Safety Net Program, it was pushed out on social media.
Yep.
On a number of pages.
Okay.
There was an article in the item. The chamber made email blasts to 384 businesses in town.
Okay.
So, the fact that we received, if you recall, we had conversations with another community that had done this, and they went through multiple rounds, so that if we got close to our budget in the first go-around prior to review, that would seem to be an indication that we did, that our outreach was right-sized to the resources that are available.
Okay.
And I would just want to say one thing. I know you characterize it as kind of late in rolling out. I do want to emphasize that we are in the very small minority of communities that have elected to do this kind of business assistance with ARPA. There aren't. If 10% of the communities in Massachusetts have done locally funded ARPA business assistance, I'd be surprised.
Mr. Chair, and to be clear, we also had loans at the beginning of the pandemic. How much was that?
We ended up with about $106,000.
Thanks.
Right, but that was not part of the ARPA funds. Those were separate.
No, but it was COVID-related business assistance. Yeah.
Right.
Business assistance.
Yeah. For what it's worth, we had a restaurant group touring sites in Clinton today, and they were kind of knocked out by the amount of assistance that the town provides businesses, small businesses. Okay. Any other questions on ARPA? Okay. So let's look at surplus properties. Last September, at the Selectboard's request, I compiled a list of existing properties that we consider surplus properties owned by the town. After a subcommittee had looked at a range of properties, I'm going to focus on the two that we've been working on in the past year. Since that meeting, one is 329 High Street, Jean's Towing, and the other is 172 Sterling Street. First on Jean's Towing, yesterday the final round of environmental testing was done. I expect that we're going to get the same result as we did last time. And if we do, testing into air quality, all the environmental assessment that we need to do at that site is completed, and it is for the purposes of the Massachusetts contingency plan, the list of contaminated sites, it is no longer a contaminated site. That is a remarkable outcome, that we can remove the property from the MCP without anything like an activity and use limitation. From looking back to our town council, without any kind of deed restriction on the property. So that in that respect, all the environmental work we're going to do on that site is complete. You may recall in June that I came before you asking permission to apply to the underutilized properties program through the One Stop for funding $38,000 to fund design of the rehabilitation of the building, with the idea that we go back next year and maybe apply to the program for capital funds so that we get the building using public funds nice and shiny and ready to go. We received word, I think on Monday, that we did not receive a grant. We did not receive that $38,000 grant. So we're not going to receive those funds. I can say that while drawing up the application, my professional background, I was thinking that absent the new energy code requirements, we could almost do that project in-house if we wanted to design those same improvements. But that is where that program sits, that property sits. We are prepared to draft up the RFP and put it out. I see no reason why we should not do so, even if we choose to develop rehab package and maybe hold it for an application next June, but there's not necessarily any reason to not do that. Even if we develop that package as included as part of the RFP, if it were the board's wish, to say that this is what we have in mind in terms of building, property revitalization, rehab. That property is ready to fly away from us, I think. Our only reason to hold it would be if we were wanted to apply in the next round for public funds, state funds, to rehabilitate the building. I should say, I haven't gotten the feedback on why we weren't awarded that grant. I was kind of surprised, but it was such a small amount of money, I'm not terribly crestfallen. I did get some feedback while we were reviewing it, is that because we were thinking of keeping it potentially to operate as a pop-up retail location, there was some uncomfortableness with the idea that it was going to be a public building, because that particular program doesn't fund public building, even if it's for an economic development purpose. So I think that might have, I won't be able to get the feedback till after they announce the awards, and that's when they open up their staff for reviewer comments. But we didn't get the funds, and we can decide from here on if we want to develop a rehab package and include an RFP, develop a rehab package and go back next June for public funding, or not develop a rehab package and put it out for RFP.
I have a question.
Sure.
And by fly away, do you mean sell it? Is that the end goal?
I think, if that's what we're going to do, we do own it. I think the intent, the discussion has been, since we took it in 2015, was to increase its value in the market, and then sell it via RFP rather than auction, so that we have some discretion in evaluating proposed uses, proposed investment, and try to get something, the word I always use is something delightful there, something that as you enter downtown Clinton from the north, you come to a light, you look around, you say, I'm in Clinton now, what do I see?
Okay.
And if we have a revitalized, kind of cool, though derelict 1920s gas station as kind of your introduction to downtown, and it's got some use, that ideally is a unique service to the community, or something that complements the adjacent businesses, I think that's what we'd like to see. And I'm very agnostic as to what that is. I'm open to a wide range of uses, just as long as it's a good idea and it takes care of the property.
Mr. Chair.
Sure.
So what kind of restrictions, what would that RFP look like?
Forgive me, Sean, I did draft up, I think this might have been way back when we had the surplus committee with Selectman Buzzno. I did draft up a skeleton RFP a couple years ago. I can't for the life of me remember the entirety of it, but I think we would prioritize.
Keeping the space?
Beg pardon?
Keeping the space?
Yeah, I think all redevelopment scenarios are predicated on preserving the building. That comes back from the first recommendation from TRC, the environmental consultants, and effectively dealing with the environmental issues on the site was less expensive dealing with the building there. But we would bias towards businesses that had a track record in their industry. We would bias towards, ideally, businesses that provided a unique service or good in the community. This is all for your review and feedback. Demonstration that the proponent has sufficient resources to address the remaining site conditions, and ideally something that is complementary to adjacent businesses. And to put it bluntly, a convenience store is more beneficial to surrounding businesses than an insurance agent, something that generates a lot of foot traffic. I'm just picking totally random businesses out of my head, but something that basically puts feet on the sidewalk is generally more beneficial to adjacent businesses.
What would that property, what did that property generate for tax revenue? Is there a ballpark the last time it was operational? I don't know if you would know.
Chump change, to be honest. It wasn't valued. I mean, it wasn't it's a smaller than 5,000 square foot property. The building's, effective year built was 1950 probably. It didn't generate a lot.
And for an RFP, do you have any idea what you think that would go for?
Oh, in terms of sale price?
Yeah.
I have no idea, though that's one thing that we can put in the RFP is how much weight we will put on the offer price. I think I'm going to speak for myself. I'm much more concerned about the succeeding business than on the return. But that's only my opinion. And I would say that, with this process, we get one bite at the apple. We sell it once, and then we never think about it again. It's not like we put a deed restriction or any kind of clawback in there, because quite frankly, those deter investment. If someone thinks that their investment is not secure, the return on their investment is not secure, it has a depressing effect.
Are there any restrictions on what the land can be used for, or what that plot can be used for?
Only through zoning, which is why it's encouraging that the AUL came back clean. It came back without the need for an AUL, so there's going to be no deed restricted uses. We could put those in there, I wouldn't advise it, but there will be no deed restricted uses, and so it's limited by zoning.
So
Mr. Chairman,
let me just finish this one out and then I'll move on. So has there been any consideration into keeping that and turning it into a small little like park or open space or sitting area, obviously removing the building, right? I mean,
There has been consideration given to it, but it was a suggestion of Mr. Sargent, former selectman. But to be honest, we didn't get very far with that. The fact that it's a clean site, for instance, I would have, if you had told me 2 years ago that the site would be, cleaned without I need an AUL, I would have been amazed. But for instance, something like a park would have been unimaginable on a contaminated site.
So the only reason I bring it up is if it doesn't generate, if it's not a revenue generator in terms of tax,
Yep.
and, I do have apprehension with that piece of property only because of where it sits. The parking is going to be very limited. Sits right on a major intersection. And to your point, if people are entering High Street from downtown from the north side, and there's a sitting area that, streetscaped and whatnot that fits downtown, could it be of more value to the Clinton community than if it were commercial property?
That's for the board to decide. If I can express my opinion, on corners, on corners, buildings are better than voids. That having a corner mark that intersection is more engaging, I think, than a park. It's basic city design 101 is don't create voids at the corners.
My only counter to that would be for the last decade plus, it's been an eyesore.
Oh, yeah.
Right? So
it's been a decade.
My concern would be if a business came in there, purchased it, if the and I understand your point about a business that's has longevity or success within their industry, in the situation, if it didn't work out, are we going to be left with another, for rent, for sale property on High Street on top of the ones that we already have that are unrented? That's all.
Yeah, and that's always a possibility.
Happening now,
Mr. Chairman.
Sure.
Phil, what would you be talking like for parking spaces? Honestly, I'm not in favor of becoming a parking lot. I think aesthetically, the building could really, I think it looks very attractive now to what it did years ago. And
I've drawn it on paper when it's just a bunch of
I
lines.
would love
It's
to
great.
see a nice little business. A bakery, anything. You don't know what you're going to get from
You don't know what you get.
sending out an RFP, but
Garden center, a hot dog stand.
after cleaning up
ice cream
that
store,
lot and
ice cream
everything,
stand.
environmentally, I would hate to see it just take a building down and just make it another vacant.
Yeah.
But that's only my opinion, but do you know how many parking spaces, for business?
Well, I wouldn't, in no scenario would I make it a parking lot, and I don't think Selectman Coates is talking about that.
Yeah.
Just because if it's proximity to the intersection, it would be a dangerous place to put parking. Cars pulling in and out that close to a signalized intersection.
So there would be no parking at all?
No,
Whoever
the
opens-
the space itself is probably 2 to 3 accessible parking spaces.
Yeah, well, that would be, if you were facing the building, would be to
Yeah.
the right-hand side.
Mary Rose, I haven't done a layout, but given the shallowness of the site and the fact that it's curving on one side, I wouldn't be surprised if you
Yeah.
could get.
Well, only because I
Eight cars.
remember when the gas station was there, the bays were on the right-hand side.
Yeah.
So-
I don't know, I haven't done a layout, but just
Yeah.
the site geometry doesn't say,
Well, it's tight, that's obvious, yeah.
so.
No, I will say that, yeah, I would like to see it kind of rehabbed into a commercial property, and I have had a small business approach me about that site and ask me to keep them abreast, and they're not currently have a retail operation in Clinton, so it would be kind of new, but I think there is a lot of people looking at that space with interest and would love to kind of see it explored, but do you think there is, and maybe this is part of the RFP, I do think it is a cool site. I've actually seen people convert these types of things to restaurants where they, lift it up for outdoor seating,
there's one in Shrewsbury
bays and
Street.
stuff. Yeah, really kind of unique thing, so I would love to see if people can get creative. Is there a scenario where they could potentially tear it down and build a building?
There is. I mean, I think we put an RFP, if we could put an RFP that prioritizes revitalizing the building, but like I said, once we don't own it, I'm not proposing that we put any restriction on it, except maybe the only one would be a rescission, whereas if we come into the agreement in 2 years, you haven't done anything,
Yeah.
we take it back, especially if we're talking about a low purchase price.
I have a question for Mr. Gibbons on this one. So with that being town property right now until a transaction is completed, what's the liability for the vehicles that are currently parking on that property? Is there a liability based upon the condition of that parking lot to the town of Clinton? If someone were to twist an ankle, break an ankle, get hurt?
Well, I assume that the property line is listed on our part of our ownership of properties in town, so we have, I'd like to think we covered by our ownership. If we had an incident like that, with someone tripped and fell, whatever would happen to that property, it'd be no different than if it happened here. Like all our, it's not our only property we own in town, so we typically list them on our policy.
Right. It would be general liability for trips and falls. I'd have to look into, like, if somebody's car got damaged, if it wasn't the town's fault, are we responsible? That's something I could check into, but general liability would be covered as the
I don't
city.
think it would be treated any differently than any other property.
Okay.
No.
Just follow our policy.
Right.
So the only thing, and I don't know how the board feels about this, but is there a possibility of, until this is finalized, whether we use some type of plant or something that's aesthetically appealing to kind of try to discourage people from using that lot as parking spaces until it becomes private? Because just by looking at the condition of the parking lot, it's uneven, it's broken up, and we just redid High Street. There's parking spaces there, so for it to become a hangout for ruffians or ne'er-do-wells.
Well, why don't we have the DPW put some Jersey barriers up?
Well, I would
there
just
so
figure
that-
something that's kind of like,
that's an easy fix, really.
100% agree with you. I just figured something that was like, had a little bit of like,
Beautification.
a little more pleasing to the eye
I
than.
was having this discussion with somebody only last week, and I can't remember who it was.
Are there no parking signs there?
I was going to say, is there a sign that says no trespassing?
No.
Yeah, like a sign on the building? I know, but at least.
There were no
does
parking
there-
signs
does that
posted
cover
on the building.
liability?
They were completely ignored. Then when the overhead doors were open, they fell to the ground, and I thought, well, it's use putting these back up. I was having this discussion with somebody only last week, and I can't remember who it was. We talked about putting some, maybe some ballasted no parking signs, in front of it. It is that, we could put Jersey barriers. We have those. Right now, all the planters are out there because we moved them out to do the air testing. I'd hate to leave them out all winter, but yeah, we can look into doing
I
something there.
think something that fit, the Jersey barriers as a short-term solution, but I think, like, as you mentioned, this is what people are going to be pulling onto, into downtown looking at. So I think if there's something that could be, I know last year there was Snoopy
bring
themed
Snoopy
tires
back
or
there.
whatnot, like, just something to discourage the parking or the access there, whether it's no parking signs or no trespassing signs, and, we can utilize High Street for
I
that.
think it was you, Sean. We were talking about how they park on the sidewalk as well when they pull in front of the space. Was that what you were
Yes.
having a discussion?
Yeah, when I've seen, they're all over the place there.
Yeah.
And that's as much a concern to me too. That's not going to help the sidewalks. So
Yeah.
I think maybe that starts stemming the tide if people don't consider that
Okay.
a free.
I'll have a discussion with the DPW director and the police, and we'll figure something that, I mean, it's going to look like don't park here, but maybe it's something we can do.
Does that need a motion?
So moved.
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Okay.
Thank
Oh,
you.
and then we have 172 Sterling Street.
Yes.
Okay. Mayor, 172 Sterling Street, as you know, is a contaminated site. As you know, a few months ago, debris pile containing asbestos-containing material was covered and fenced in. We have 2 current ongoing requests for assistance to remove that asbestos, that pile. One is initiated by the town through the Mass Brownfields program. The other is by Mass DEP, asking for a removal action, an EPA-funded removal action. Feel very good about both of them. Can't say much more at the moment, but also feel very bad about one thing, and that is that working on an application we're working on for November 13th to the EPA Environmental Remediation Program, working with NLSP, suggested that we recheck our numbers. And long story short is the funding that was requested based on tipping fees a few months later, they've more than doubled. So that is a problem that we're working on now in terms of what we're going to ask for in our EPA grant going in November 13th. So in short, we have some contamination that's sitting on the site, on top of the site, that we're going to have to remove. We are not under a removal action order from Mass DEP. They've been working with us collaboratively, but at some point that will probably come. We need to get rid of that pile. We feel very good about our requests, but we feel bad that the requests that we made based upon 2 separate engineers' recommendations don't seem to be adequate to the task. So even as we prepare this application for November, my original intent was to seek to remediate some of the stuff that was under the ground. We're still running the alternative ADCA, alternative brownfields cleanup assessments, to understand how we might do different things, but we haven't formulated whether we're going to ask for stuff that's above the ground, assistance in getting rid of stuff that's above the ground, stuff that's below the ground, or a little bit of both. Discouraging to hear, but it is what it is. So we continue to work on remediating that site. We intend to put an application for about $500,000 in remediation assistance on November 13th. We've had encouraging discussions with the funders, but this is a nationally competitive program. We don't know what will come of it. We need to at least get rid of, I think, the pile that's on top before we consider disposing of the property. Again, in both of these initiatives on High Street and Sterling Street, our intent was to increase the marketability of the site by removing known liabilities. And as a municipality, we have a unique opportunity to do that, but we haven't been able to successfully do that yet. It's a very slow process. I appreciate that. You know, we've owned Sterling Street for 5 years now. It's no consolation to know that that's just the way these things go, but that's just the way these things go. It's one rung of the ladder at a time, and we're trying to address at least the contamination that we know that exists as a result of the demolition of the building.
Mr. Chair?
Sure.
So, Phil, when will we know, like, when will we know when we've exhausted all of our opportunities for grant funding or government assistance with remediation?
Well, I guess you don't know until you stop asking. We'll know then we've exhausted when we've either gotten the funding or we've gotten tired of asking. I can't give you a more precise answer than that. We have 2 asks in place right now.
Okay.
And we may be making a 3rd ask in 28 days.
Okay.
But yeah, you can keep trying until you go. It's just the cost liability is such that I think it would be severe depressant on on private interest in the property.
And how much, do you have any idea of, I mean, you must have an idea, like how much money would we be talking about would be required to remediate that entire site?
Oh, the entire site, $2 million.
Okay,
But we're not looking to remediate the entire site. We're
Okay.
looking to remediate enough that site development becomes viable and feasible. And that was part of the exercise we did with mass development last year, was to understand how you could design the site and maybe avoid some of the contaminated areas.
okay, so does that just mean like,
Around the trouble spots.
Yeah.
gotcha, okay, all right.
And there's a couple, I remember seeing a couple options for different
Yeah.
layouts of the property.
They developed three layouts,
Three,
and
yeah.
they were constrained in the max and yield by going by the zoning, which is totally understandable, but our zoning requires one parking space for every 500 feet
Which is
of industrial space, and to be honest, the ratio is more like 2,000 feet per worker now, so. But they couldn't say, well, we're just going to assume that the planning board's going to give us these waivers. So we got a yield of, in the best case scenario, of about 136,000 square feet of space. But I think it could be higher than that. But again, they were limited by the prescriptive zoning that applies to the site.
Just, Mr. Chairman, so when you're talking about the pile that's sitting there, that we've got covered now with the
Yep.
contaminated soil, did you say the price is doubled on that, or for
The
the
hauling price.
entire site?
The hauling price has, which isn't the entirety of the cost, but it's a significant part of the cost.
Okay, so originally, we were talking like around 500,000,
Yeah, we're talking 460, yeah,
okay, 460,
yeah. And that's what we asked for.
okay.
We asked for 250 for mass development because that's effectively their maximum happy spot, in which case we'd have to come back and come up with the balance from town funds, which could be from town meeting, could be from the community development fund, although I would hate to go in that direction. It could be from the infrastructure stabilization fund with the approval of town meeting, if there was that interpretation, or it could come from ARPA funds, quite frankly. But I'm not coming to you because I can't come to you and say, can we take $200,000 from ARPA funds and then find out that it's a $500,000 need. So we just got this confirmation of pricing on Friday. So we're going back and talking to all the state and federal and professional entities that are helping us here to figure out what happens next. What's the best way to proceed, looking primarily at November 13th, which is our next grant deadline.
I mean, I hope it becomes a reality for the town, because
Yeah.
that almost 9 acres of property would just be such a positive for the town of Clinton down in that area.
Totally agree.
I mean, it has so much potential.
I agree.
So, Mr. Chair, so Phil, just to wrap this up, so there's 2 asks right now.
Yep.
And what are the deadlines for those asks?
One of them, we're waiting for the state to make grant announcements,
Okay,
and that should be imminent.
okay,
The other one is, it's actually called, it's a removal action request that's out of a grant cycle. It's from the EPA's general fund. They intend to, I heard back from Kevin Dowse at Mass DEP, they haven't gotten on site yet. I guess they've been working at some site in Vermont. So they expect to be on the site in November doing their preliminary assessments.
okay.
So we're hoping that before the end of November, they said at the end of November, we should have an idea.
Okay.
They come out, they assess the site, they also look to see if there's any other contaminants on site that need to be addressed at the same time on the surface. They do different costs, they do their own analyses, and then they say yes or no. We were hoping that that would have been done in September and October, and that we would have known before we went into this November 13th grant deadline, but that's not the case.
And which November 13th grant deadline?
That's EPA assessment, EPA assessment and remediation grants, and we're looking for remediation funds. We've already gotten grants to do the assessment, which was done and finished, completed in 2021.
Is that one of the 2 asks that we're just talking about right now, or is that something different?
This is a brand-new ask. This is
Okay, so that's a new one, the new one that you're talking about?
Yes,
Okay.
and on that subject, there requires there to be a public hearing in connection with that grant application. That is next Wednesday, the 25th, at 7 PM here in this hall. It's just to open up to the community to see if there's any, what concerns or desires there are within the community for the site, and ideally to review the cost-benefit of the remediation cost-benefit alternatives.
And you say the deadline for that is November 13th?
13th.
Okay, and then in deadline for application?
Deadline for application.
And do you have any idea like when, like a decision, do they advertise when?
Next spring.
Next spring, okay, all right.
And there's
So,
like a 2 to 3 year performance period after that.
okay. And if we strike out on all these grant fundings, would we be looking at, and maybe that's something that you were discussing a couple minutes ago, would we be looking at like what the town would be willing to pay to, like you said, not remediate the entire site? You said there's $2 million, that's not feasible. But you said there's ways to remediate like portions of it or sections of it where you can make it more attractive?
I think in terms of town funds, I'd recommend that they be used only in connection with the asbestos pile, which, as I said, and Mike may agree or disagree, we are not under removal order at the moment. Mass DEP has been wonderful to work with on this. They made the request to EPA, but that may come down the line if we're not able to address this. So if we were to use town funds, I would only use them to address that,
Yep.
if only because there's the possibility that we're going to have to address it whether we like it or not.
Okay, and then at that point, so by next spring, either maybe if there's some other government program that comes along, we might apply for that between now and then, but by,
And to be honest, really with this EPA grant, well, the grant announcements for the Brownfields grant will be made soon. But if come the spring, we are not successful in receiving grant funding, I'd recommend to the board, quite frankly, that you maybe get some opinions from some people other than me as to what the fullness of the picture is and whether we just want to sell it and take our chances or if we want to hold it and continue to try and clean it up. I think I'm always thinking, let's increase the value of this, but you might want to get a more global perspective, you know.
right, okay.
You know, sell it for less and just have it counted in the cost of doing business
Yep.
for the new owner. The more we take care of, the wider our, the more discretion we can exercise in choosing a successful applicant, because we will dispose of this via RFP as well.
And I just have one last question on the RFP. If we go the RFP route with either of those properties, but I think we were talking about it with the Jeans Auto property,
Yeah.
are we obligated to pick one of the people that apply for it, or can we say like none of them fit? And
Yep.
we can, okay, all
And it was-
right.
That's language that you include in the RFP, and so the
Okay.
town reserves the right to refuse all proposals.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Anybody else? All right, thank you so much for coming.
Okay, thank you so much.
Thanks, Bill.
All right, next item on the agenda, the American Rescue Plan Act recommendations. The first item is the Council on Aging Transportation Services. Sure, absolutely.
Debbie Goodsell, the director at the Clinton Council on Aging.
Thank you so much. So there was the quote, that was from McGovern Municipal.
Yes.
$32,398.15 for an all-wheel drive SUV.
Correct.
What was the amount again?
$32,398.15 for a 2023 Chevy Equinox LT all-wheel drive.
And this vehicle would be used strictly as a vehicle that would take our Clinton residents over the age of 60 to medical appointments that we don't already provide, so unmet needs. And the vehicle would be housed at the center. It would not be going home with anybody or anything. It would be up here like the vans are. And like I said, we would have our drivers now who are already certified would be doing those transportation, those rides.
Mr. Chair?
Sure.
Just have one question, Deb.
Yeah.
If with this, and I'm just ignorant on this, if a senior citizen is wheelchair bound,
Yeah.
can we still utilize this mode of transportation?
Yes
Or-
and no. It would
Okay.
depend on the person and their abilities.
Okay,
You know, my dad's in a wheelchair, we'd get him in and out of the car.
right, but if someone was
If
like,
they
say,
can't,
paralyzed or
right, if they
something?
can't get out, then we would still utilize Clinton livery.
Okay.
And we would use the grant funding, because that would be far and few between.
Sure, yep,
So we would use
yep,
the livery for those types of.
right. But either
wheelchair.
way, I would imagine you want an SUV too, because if your, people might be
The
taking things
walkers,
with them.
yes.
Yeah, okay. All right, yeah, thank you, that was it.
Any other questions? What is the pleasure of the board? Make the motion.
I will move to approve the request for the Council on Aging vehicle for medical rides for the seniors.
I'll second.
Within this quote, this would not include the lettering of the vehicle, correct?
Right.
Could we include within this the motion to include, or how would that be covered?
No, you could, if the motion does include that, then it would give discretion of staff to get it, just to get it done without coming back to the board. So it shouldn't be a huge cost, but we do want all vehicles to be lettered.
So would we have to modify that, or is
Can I
that
rescind my motion?
rescind it?
No,
Make
maybe
a
just say
separate-
to add that to
Okay.
just add it to the motion.
Because we didn't, there's the other two vehicles that we purchased. We
Yeah.
want to letter them as well too, so would it make
Yeah.
more sense just to, approve this car and then do a separate motion to letter all the vehicles?
Sure. Yep.
Okay. Then
All right, so
Now, is that every vehicle? Would you make that for every vehicle?
all
I
the
would
three
say
vehicles we've
the ones
approved.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, every vehicle, because there's one vehicle, the police, fire chief's vehicle has no seal on it.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, let's get them all.
Yep. Yep.
Yeah, I mean, we don't have to.
All right, so let's close out the vehicle itself right now. So is there any discussion on the vehicle request, the vehicle approval for the Council on Aging? There being none, all in favor?
Aye.
And then,
I will move to put the seal of Clinton and letter each town vehicle that have been recently approved and any that may currently omit the seal.
I'll second.
That don't have the seal, yeah.
I would just make a request. I know I've requested stationery in the past, but can we use the lettering like similar to what the DPW has for their vehicles versus, I know there's a separate set of lettering out there that facilities has used, but I think,
So there says civic pride?
well, I'm not saying,
Oh.
that, like, there seems to be a couple of
Like the department?
versions out there, in the one that the DPW,
Okay.
whether it's something that could resemble that, it looks,
Yeah, the seal, the font, those type of.
yeah, exactly, versus I think facilities just has it's a square sticker with the emblem, right? And, the DPW trucks, that is aesthetically more more appealing, I guess I would say.
Yeah, whatever, I mean, I don't know who went into the decision-making of the DPW versus facilities, but we should have one emblem seal for all our town vehicles.
Well,
That
the
should be
building
consistent,
inspector
right?
too, the building inspector's vehicle that's more in line with the facilities one, but I would just, for it to be uniform.
Right, as we go forward, that it's,
Yeah.
we'll start now, and then going forward, all these vehicles should start to conform, so it should be
Yeah.
the same. I absolutely agree. And also, the assistant town administrator is researching vehicle use policies as well, too, so that we have something in place as to anyone that has a vehicle, it'll come to the select board for review and approval, but how it gets used, who uses it, where it gets stored, and all that type of stuff.
Excellent.
Great.
Any further discussion about the lettering? There being none, all in favor?
Aye.
Thank you very, very much. This is going to help the seniors in town. You can't imagine how much, like I said, we get requests each day. Can you take me to Acton? Can you take me to Harvard? Now we can. It's great. Before I step away, though, there's one other thing. When we were talking last time, I was saying about how we don't have aging services of North Central coming into town. I did have a very long discussion with the director over there, and I told her that I presented the idea to the town about having our own HHAs and CNAs, and she said, that is wonderful, I would go with that. She said, I don't see it coming anywhere in the near future where we're going to be able to send more people out there. She said, I have a wait list of 100 right now.
And just to touch upon that, so recently I had received a advertisement from Monty Tech, and Monty Tech has they have the CNA, and they
Yeah.
have the, what's the other one?
HHA. Home
HHA,
health
so
aid.
they have those programs.
Yep.
Is there a possibility of like even just reaching out to whether Assabet does it or Worcester Tech and Monty Tech, and just as if somebody is completing that program, could there possibly be an opportunity?
Recruit them.
Or if that person might be interested, or I don't even know how that works, if it's contracted or whatnot, but,
Right.
you know, could we
I know the
establish?
state's offering it for free. You can actually go get your certification for free.
Yeah,
They just
Yeah.
have, she said they're paying the highest rate at $40 an hour to the agencies, and the agencies have to pay their people at least $19.75 an hour, and they can't get anybody. So it's just, they said we may be on our own.
hopefully,
So we're talking about like adding a home health aide on the
Yeah.
staff of the
Right.
Council on Aging? Okay, just,
So if you had, your aunts at home and lives
Yeah.
alone, she just needs, once a week, she has somebody to come set up her pills.
sure.
Or, once a week, one person needs a shower.
Yep.
Just, so we can, we may only be able to do it every other week,
Sure,
things like that, but at least we're doing something.
right.
and it wouldn't necessarily have to be on staff, right? It could be contracted
Yeah,
as well.
absolutely.
All right, yeah.
No,
Well,
that's-
that'd have to go through the budget process. then.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah,
Yes.
absolutely.
Yeah.
But at least if I put it out there now, people won't be surprised when we talk about it later,
Yep.
Okay,
so.
Well, thanks for following
Thanks,
up.
guys.
thank you.
Yeah.
All right. Next item on the agenda, the employee hazard duty pay. The board had unanimously agreed on the 4 departments of fire department, police department, cafeteria, food services department, and the Board of Health. Ed, do you want to?
Well, I mean, everyone's going to have a suggestion. I shared with you guys before the meeting, just a printout. I would like the board to just consider a tiered approach to the hazard pay based on the risk and exposure by each department. So this is just kind of after reflection and consideration. This is my take on the tiered approach. So I have the fire department at the most risk, most exposure. Closely behind them is the police department. And then the cafeteria workers and the Board of Health, I'm kind of considering on relatively the same risk playing field. So I just wanted to throw out some numbers just to kind of get the ball rolling, and then we can have a discussion on what we want to do. But my recommendation is for the fire department for $3,200, the police department $2,200, and then cafeteria and Board of Health workers at $1,200 apiece. And that would bring us, based on the personnel that we have, that would bring us to $152,600 for that endeavor. Also for consideration, which I think we should discuss, is a time period where we would define that, like, the people that are being considered for hazard pay would have to be working during that time. It can be whatever the board decides. If you could throw out, like, I don't know, March of 2020 until June of 2021, and then just have some sort of requirement for that someone would have to work at least over 50% of the time to qualify for the full hazard pay. And if someone was only working under 50% of that time during that time period, then they would receive half of the hazard pay. So that's just my recommendation, and I'm willing to just discuss it and just listen to what the other ideas are from the board. Thank you.
Mr. Chair?
Sure.
Is there any methodology to coming up with these numbers, or we just kind of guess?
So I mean, I used the state average of 2,000 was a consideration. So I kind of, I used that as a kind of a benchmark, and then I just tried to adjust based on the line of work, the opportunity for exposure, the level of risk, and try to just compensate accordingly as best I can. And yeah, I'm not dying on a hill on any of these numbers. They're just kind of, if I was coming up with something, this is what I would do. So I just, yeah, that's the rationale that was made to come up with these numbers.
You said you calculated based on the state average of the hazard pay from the ARPA funds for the communities that,
I think the state average was 2,200.
$2,000, I think it was on that sheet,
Oh.
right?
Right.
Is what we had.
Was it 2,000? I know it was around that area.
Yeah.
Gotcha.
And again, I'm not, we don't have to
Yeah.
decide on this tonight.
No, I
Or
appreciate
to
it,
start
yeah.
the discussion.
I mean, you know, in my opinion, just, you know, between fire, police, full-time employees, so I think that makes, to me, that resonates as far as distinguishing between the different tiers. The only, I know Mary Rose had brought up if there were anybody who retired in that period of time, I think, you know, I agree that they should be included. If anybody is no longer employed in the town of Clinton, if they've left, I would say that they would not be included in that. The only piece I would say to the 50% side is, you know, I would think that someone needs to, I would think they would have to be employed by the town of Clinton during that period for, I would say, a minimum of 25% of that time. All right, if somebody worked one day, does that qualify them for 50% of that hazard pay, right? But if someone is here for 25%, I would say that it at least provides a benchmark that the person put time in. But
So I feel like we should have a better understanding of what that number is before assigning. Because, I mean, we could arbitrarily say like, fire gets this much, but I think until we have an idea of like what constitutes that final number for each area, and I know that will take some time and effort and data collection, but is this like personnel, is this like, I'm assuming this is like current personnel, 22 fire, 27 police, 15 cafeteria, 4 board of health?
So I can tell you the fire is 22 that were there start to finish.
Okay.
Police, 27 that are there now, start to finish, but 2 of them came on towards the end, so cafeteria had 9 that were there for the first, like the school year into the summer, and then they had people that came on in the fall, that next school year. So, and then the Board of Health was the whole time as well. Retirements, I'm not sure. I am also just I'm still waiting to hear back from the state if you can pay someone that does not currently work here, because there was somebody said there was something that they thought was in the rules. I haven't found it, so I just have sent in an email to get clarification from the state.
Just personally, if somebody worked, hypothetically, say somebody worked for the town during that COVID period that we defined, and then 6 months after that, they retired, I mean, they still put themselves at risk during COVID. So if we're legally handcuffed from paying them, we can't do anything about it. But if we have the ability, I think someone should still be deserving of that hazard pay money. I don't think they should be penalized just because they retired. And I don't even know how many people, I'm assuming that it's not going to be a large number anyway, so I don't think we need to like split the atom discussing it, but just in general, that's my thoughts on it.
yeah, I mean, the period of time that seemed to be identified was, as you mentioned, March 2020 through June 2021. It's 14, was that 14 months, 15 months? 50%, right,
Yeah.
whether it's 50%, you just, you know, you could keep it simple. I mean, I don't know what the board's appetite is for voting to approve on, you know, and leaving that condition of, you know, the retirees or if, you know, people, when they came in or when they left, I mean, we could determine that. It doesn't seem like it would be less than this number, I would think. But
I mean, I'd like to, you know, I guess I would concur with you as far as like the involvement that the cafeteria workers as opposed to the Board of Health workers. I mean, how do you, you know, you're talking about giving them both the same amount, and what were the differences in their risk factors as far as being involved? So I think just maybe a little bit more discussion. I don't disagree that I think you have to break it down into to the categories as far as the police and fire. I guess theoretically I agree with you, Ed, as far as the differential, but I'm not so sure I'm comfortable with the two bottom ones as they stand, just, so maybe a little bit more information.
yeah, I mean, well, the cafeteria, they were working, they were handing out lunches, breakfast and lunch daily. Right, I think it was basically 4 days, I think it went 4 days a week, and then they were handing them things to get them through the weekend. So they were going to various sites within the town of Clinton as a drop-off. People were coming to that spot, they'd get their bag breakfast and lunch for the day. So they were directly interacting with the Clinton community.
Yeah, I actually think the best thing to do would be to have more discussion about this. I think this is just a kind of a opening to the discussion. So I think everyone can kind of see where everyone else, where our heads are at. So I would lean towards, you know, I don't think anyone here is pushing for a decision now. I think we should discuss it more so that whatever we decide is something that we're comfortable with. I will say this about cafeteria workers, and this is, I say this like half joking, but it's, if you could design a system for like, I mean, they literally were standing there and every kid comes by single file, spends like, you know, 20, 30 seconds in front of them, then the next kid. I mean, if you're actually thinking of a way to try to spread a virus, like that would probably be the way to do it, like single file, just exposure after like one person after the next, so they get through the whole school. I mean, granted, each kid is only in front of them for a short period of time, but that was kind of in the back of my head considering the risk factors, and you know, they were in it, and as Selectman Kobus mentioned, they were assisting from the very beginning, and they never stopped coming to work and helping getting meals out and everything. So yeah, I think we're all on the same page, but I do think it warrants a little bit more reflection. I have no problem with that. I actually encourage it.
In both line items at the bottom, those employees are part-time, right? That's one thing they both have in common, as opposed to the two tiers up top are full-time employees. So as far as consideration, is there anything specific that we want to look at, or are we just leaving this, are we going to consider the whole thing again, right? Are we, what do we want to look, is there something specific, some areas we want to look at, so then that way we can gather that information, or are we just, I'd like to just try to make feel like we're taking a step forward, and then that way any information we need to gather we can do for our next meeting.
Yeah, I mean, I'd like to have some more information on the Board of Health. I know that, you know, they do a lot of things, and they were doing a lot during the pandemic, so, you know. I'm just saying, I don't know if that's a legitimate number for them or if it isn't. That's all. I mean,
Yeah.
what am I basing it on? That's all.
I mean, that was my, I mean, if it's part-time and that's what the discount is, but if we're establishing here that cafeteria's, you know, in Ed's words, you know, a perfect super spreader case, and they're, you know, it's a, not to put anything against fire and police, but it's a 260% jump or 180% jump. So is that based on a part-time thing, or is that an exposure thing?
That's an exposure thing. I mean, I hate to say that.
But you just said that they would like.
I thought I prefaced it by saying I was half joking with it, but I don't think
I'm not joking about this.
Oh, okay, great. I don't think that as much risk as they were under, I don't think that compares to performing CPR or riding in an ambulance with someone that's sick and going to the hospital. I think those are two completely different levels of risk. So I apologize for making a joke. But it is, I think the point I was trying to get at is that's why I think the cafeteria workers should be considered for some type of hazard pay. But I didn't mean to imply that like their job was the riskiest compared to the fire department or the police department.
You know, and I think one of the, you know, one criteria that I just mentioned before was, you know, these 4 departments, their working environment could not be modified to improve, you know, their personal safety, right? So, I mean, the cafeteria, they still had to go, you know, they're still serving breakfast and lunch, even through the height of COVID, the Board of Health, they couldn't modify theirs, right? They still had to be involved, the police, the fire, right? So I think, you know, as far as the frequency of exposure, right, versus, you know, if somebody is working 40 hours a week versus someone that's working 20 hours a week, like you could, you know, but you know, let's, if we're looking for more information on, are we looking for like information from the Board of Health as far as like hours or like activities or both?
At least hours. If we're going to hold part-time as a criteria, I'd like to know what we're talking about.
And if the cafeteria had varying hours, some of them were 30 hours, 35 hours, so we can get all that as well.
That's right. So I was on that.
I think that we should be able to break down for each department with the list of employees, their dates that they worked, the hours they worked, not put names, you know, kind of like Phil did with his grants here, and not put their names, but just have all the data so the board can review. So.
And that would be just pulled from payroll?
Yeah.
That's how we would get that?
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's, are we looking for any more information for any other department, aside from cafeteria, Board of Health, or?
No, I think those are the 4 departments we agreed.
Yeah, I agree. I just didn't know if we wanted to gather any additional information, right? So that way, when we come back to the table the next time, we'll have additional information on the Board of Health and cafeteria. I was just asking, is there anything else in addition to what's been mentioned that we want to pull from information from any of these 4 departments? That's all.
Like if people wanted information on the fire department.
Yeah, I just figured while we're gathering info,
Right.
let's get whatever we need.
Yeah, ask them their duties and just a narrative for what they did during that period.
Well, I think that if the board is, and that's what I mean, is does the board want additional information for police and fire, or is everyone kind of
Comfortable
on
with-
board with like understanding what their
Okay.
responsibilities entail as that? So if it's just cafeteria, Board of
Just the
Health.
other two.
That's all, that's what I don't know if I threw that out in a confusing way. But, so yeah, so we'll get additional information from the cafeteria and Board of Health. And then we can,
But we'll still give all the employee information for all departments. We'll just get a narrative on duties for those 2.
And just, I don't think we need a vote or anything. Was everyone comfortable with that time period of March 2020 to June 2021?
Yeah, whatever the
Yes.
state of emergency was.
yeah, there you go, that's what I was trying to think of the name.
Right.
Well, like,
Whatever
okay.
the state of emergency was.
March 15th to June 15th, 2021.
Perfect, okay.
And
I know we're going to be discussing, we're getting down into the granularity here, but I think we should all be happy. I mean, not, just from the research that Angela did, it seems like not every community did hazard pay for its workers.
No.
We are doing it, and I think that's something that we should be, they deserve it, and we should take pride that we're going in that direction.
Very good. Thank you for putting that together. Thank you, Angela. Any other discussion or, on that? No. Okay, moving on to the town administrator report.
Hey, Mr. Chair, thank you. Just a few items this week. First off, just to report, the Board of Health, in conjunction with the Montechusett Public Health Network, conducted a successful flu clinic yesterday at Clinton Town Hall. They were also able to offer the COVID vaccine, so they were able to, for people that wanted it, they were able to get both at that time. So being able to, again, have these clinics yearly, which I know it was kind of stalled during COVID, so it was good. Also, the public health nurse just kind of wanted to maybe inform the board and the public that they're seeing kind of an uptick in Lyme disease in Clinton. So just to advise people to take precautions when they're walking in wooded areas or out working in the yard, you know, to try to make sure you have long pants or try to keep your exposure down. The other, just an update on the police chief. They've been moving forward with their radios from the ARPA funds. They will begin with installation of mobile multi-band radios in the department vehicles. Police chief appreciates the support from the board and feels these multi-band radios will help better keep direct communication with surrounding agencies and provide liability for safety of officers in the community. So they appreciate the funding. And the final item I had for tonight is the Finance Committee approved the reserve fund transfer for requested by the board for the recruitment consultant for the Superintendent of Public Works position. Representative from Community Paradigm has already been meeting with staff and information gathering to start the process, hoping to advertise in the next couple weeks. One of the suggestions they had was, you know, by having a screening committee, as we've used for a lot of major department head positions in the past, that to try to keep that screening committee kind of small and nimble, because they're indicating it's going to be a difficult job recruiting for this position. Other communities they've been at, they've saying they've gotten single digits, 2-3 applications is all that they're seeing qualified. They might get 10 applications, but people that would meet the qualifications. So if it is something that there are candidates out there, they want to be able to have a small committee that can meet quickly, act quickly, and try to make an offer if that's possible. So we'd be looking for a member of the select board to help participate in that process. Whatever you decide to put somebody forward, that'd be helpful. So,
yeah, I'd like to volunteer for that position on that screening committee.
Okay.
Good job.
Good luck.
Enjoy.
Happy hunting.
thank you.
Thank you. And then the other positions, so if we looked at a board of 3 or a screening committee of 3, do you want to identify?
I'll probably talk with the consultant one more time and see. I know we kind of bounced around whether it would be, some from the personnel board perhaps, because that this position is under those guidelines. Maybe HR, whether HR would be involved, whether it would be maybe another, as we did with other searches, maybe an administrator in another community that would be familiar with the needs of this position. The committee, I think that they would like to see with the current employee, to meet with that employee to understand the position, but there was kind of some discussion about whether that employee really should be on the committee, since they're they would be kind of overseeing their successor, so that's not, normally does not happen. But certainly they would like them involved to kind of talk about, what the daily duties are or what to look for in an applicant, but maybe not be on the screening committee itself. So, so we had discussion about several different avenues, so I'd like to kind of go back and talk with them and we kind of put that together. I'll let the board know once that's finalized, but at least tonight, if we were able to get a board representative, that's helpful. So.
I mean, similar to what we did with Mr. Duffy, I mean, would the board be comfortable leaving it up to Michael's discretion on forming that subcommittee, that screening committee?
Yes.
If it is time sensitive, then,
Absolutely.
appoint who you
And then we can move forward.
wish to be in versus, it doesn't need to come back to you.
That'd be helpful. Thank you.
Yeah.
Very good. Thank you. Thank you for the updates. The next item, the fiscal year 2024 goal setting. I'd like to move forward tonight with discussing and approving the select board goals for the upcoming fiscal year. The only, the two, what I'm proposing is we continue forward with the 5 existing goals from the previous fiscal year, and then add the 2 goals that I had brought forth last meeting, which were a technology initiative as well as a beautification initiative. If we can get, I guess if we can get an approval, then we could move forward with.
Mr. Chair, just one, I thought you said stick with the 5 and then add 2.
Correct.
Shouldn't that should be 7, right?
Correct.
I don't see 5 here.
The 5 from the previous fiscal year that we've approved,
Right.
right? Oh, you're saying, and that,
Yeah, in our handout.
right, so, but I think these were tasks, right? When we talk about this, these are tasks.
Oh, okay.
So if we keep the five goals,
Okay.
Right.
So these aren't the goals.
no, those would be
Okay,
the
understood, sorry.
tasks.
Yep.
The bottom 2, enhancing technology, town beautification. So the goal that I had, the 2 goals that I had submitted for the board to review came with, it was just basically the objective, right? Well, the goal,
Can you just review then because I told you, computer problems, I can't get into the packet. So what are the goals that we have?
I'll tell you right now.
And I promise I'll know them by heart for the next meeting. We should know.
No, you won't. Still be asking for an email to be forwarded to you. All right, so
It's not nice.
the
This is where a cloud would be helpful.
up in the clouds.
Yeah.
It's coming. All right, so we had, goal number 1 was town finances. Goal number 2, do you want me to read the description, or are you good? I can.
Yeah, just real quick, yeah.
Goal number 1, town finances. The town of Clinton will develop a strategic plan to better address current and future town expenditure and revenue needs while continuing to provide high-quality municipal service. Goal number 2, delivery of service. The town's delivery of municipal services is efficient, productive, sustainable, and clearly communicated. Goal number 3, economic development. The town of Clinton has a strong, stable, innovative, and vibrant business district. Goal number 4, accountability. Town government is accountable, transparent, centralized, knowledgeable, and dedicated to customer service. Number 5, goal number 5, performance management. implementation of a performance review system developed to provide a workable and uniform practice of performance management for employees throughout the town's departments and organization. And then the two that I had,
Enhancing technology and town beautification?
exactly it.
Okay.
Gee.
Okay.
Draft was, I don't even know at this point. All right, so. Yeah, so then so what we, if the board is willing to move forward with, if we were to approve the goals, and then I could work with Michael and Christine on maybe just fine tuning the verbiage, I don't know, and then we could come back to it, or, I mean, the 5 of them are being rolled over anyways, right? So,
Do we feel like they all need to be like, are there any, or maybe the objectives need to be revisit? I'll have to take a look.
yeah.
Like what was, removing what was accomplished?
Yeah,
don't know.
absolutely, whatever we want to,
Yeah, we can have that discussion, but the accomplishment of some of these goals should be handled in the evaluation, right? That's kind of like this is part of what we use to evaluate the town administrator, is how he's working towards.
yeah, so if there are any tasks that have been fulfilled, that can be dropped off, but the way that the goals were constructed was kind of overarching, right? So the tasks within them can change.
Yeah.
But if there are things, to your point, if there are things that have been completed, then that could be, we can replace, modify, remove.
Yeah, Mr. Chair, if I could, I think if we could look at them and just see, I think those overarching goals are fine, then look to see the specific A, B, C, D.
Yep.
And if there is something that is definitely a one-timer been done, or things that could stay on that could be enhanced or continue working on, but also going forward, if there's some specific tasks that the board has, I'd like that feedback as well, so that if there is something, even under the new goals, if there's something specific that you'd like to see, that guidance would be helpful too.
So would it, if the board's comfortable, would it make sense maybe to just approve these overarching goals, and then maybe at the next couple meetings, maybe we take goal 1, 2, and 3, and we review the tasks underneath them, and like which we think were met and which ones are new? Would that make sense, or? Okay. It's only the town goals, no big deal.
So what do we, any opposition to it, anybody?
Mr. Chair, I make a motion that we approve the town goals 1 through 7 as per laid out in this discussion. Number 1, town finance. Number 2, delivery of service. Number 3, economic development. Number 4, accountability. Number 5, performance management. Number 6, enhancing technology. And number 7, town beautification.
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Very good, all right. Perfect, all right, so next thing on the agenda, administrative business, raffle permit request for Clinton Greenway Conservation Trust. It's the pleasure of the board.
I move to approve the raffle permit application from the Clinton Greenway Conservation Trust.
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Next item is the Veterans of Foreign War biannual poppy drive at intersection of High Street and Church Street. What's the pleasure of the board?
I move to approve their request to for the VFW to hold their biannual Buddy Poppy Drive on November 4th at the intersection of High and Church Streets.
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Old and new business, so the speed at railroad crossings. Michael had mentioned a letter that was received by the town of Clinton notifying that the speed of the, on the railway will be increased to 40 miles per hour. There were a couple of concerns that were brought, that someone had reached out to me about. One of them was, will there be the crossing guard arms? There used to be down at the depot. I don't know if they're still there or not.
Yeah, they did not mention that, so that's something we'd have to clarify. I didn't, yeah, they didn't say they were coming in to make it safer. They just were telling us they're going faster.
Heads up.
Well, yeah. I was going to say, can we just say no?
Yeah.
Like you can't come through here that fast unless you put railroad crossings down?
Yeah, I would say,
I mean-
I would, just for the purpose of safety and liability, I would say that, can we respond with a letter requesting that we would like these installed just due to the, especially the depot.
Dense.
The three, so you have the, up at the town, up at the landfill, there's
Right.
one crossing, the depot crossing. That, there's just,
Those would be those two in Clinton. 'cause
Those are the
other-
two.
The other ones are up higher, yeah.
yeah,
higher.
and will those also be?
I believe so, because they're doing work on those lines as well, too. And CSX now owns both lines. So that's why you'll see the construction vehicles that are up there on those rails sometimes. So I think they're doing work on both rails. I think it was, if I remember, something like $150 million investment that they're putting into their system. So I can clarify that, but I think it was both.
So then the third one would be at the top of Bolton Station Road, if that, I don't know if that intersection is in Clinton or if it's in Bolton or,
I don't believe so. I think it's Bolton, yeah. Yeah,
all right, so then,
yeah, because in the past, when it's needed repair, Bolton was advocating to get that fixed. So our line starts beyond that to the left and then just shy of that coming up Bolton Road. So that one is Bolton, not Clinton. So-
Yeah, because the little greenhouse, that's Bolton from that point on. Yeah.
Right, yeah.
I don't know if we can send something in collaboration with Bolton about that particular intersection, because that's another one that, be interesting to see what 40 mile an hour.
Yeah,
Looks
I'm
like.
just looking at Main Street, they go behind people's houses or
Yeah.
like on High Street,
Yeah.
they go right over that bridge. It's 40 mile an hour.
40 is pretty fast. I'm going to sneeze at.
And then the second concern was determining what would be, what is transported on those railways. So obviously with what took place in Ohio, if, in proximity to two bodies of water in Clinton, one of them being the reservoir, like if they're like
Like a
are they-
spill.
Like,
yeah, are they going to be transporting hazardous chemicals at 40 miles an hour? If there was ever a mishap going by the Resi or Coach Lace in Mossy, then that would not be good. So I don't know if,
Sure, we can find that out as well, too, yeah. I know, they did point out that stretch, they did do put a lot of money in major upgrades in that area for signalization and security at the request of the state because of the proximity to the reservoir. So that was one thing that they highlighted, that they're making that water supply safer, by that work. But it's certainly worth the question as to what type of material is transporting across that. that area, because they have the other one, they can go the other way on certain, if it's sensitive chemicals that shouldn't be near the reservoir, they can put that on the CSX line. Now that they own both,
Yeah. And the other thing, from the little I know of that accident in Ohio, it seemed that it was the braking system that was of concern. I don't know, with the braking system on the trains that they're running, if they're just updating the railway, or how modernized are their cars are, but.
So, Mr. Chair, so like you were saying, we don't have any direct say in this decision, right? This is just between CSX and the state?
Right, yeah, there's
Okay.
no local oversight.
Is there any forum or any kind of public hearing thing that they do for the municipalities that are affected by any upgrades or speed limit increases or anything like that? Do we have any, if people, I don't even know if board members are concerned, but say we were adamantly opposed to the trains going over 40 miles an hour, do you know of, is there any venue for us to kind of voice those concerns, or any contacts at the state that we would, and you don't have to answer now.
Yeah, no, we can find that out. I think there's one level where they're already permitted for a speed limit.
Yeah,
They were currently traveling below that because the rail was in such bad shape.
Yeah.
So they were going to at least go up to that level, which I think might have been 25 miles an hour. And then they were petitioning to go to 40. So I don't know if they already have that approval for 40, or if they're going to be requesting it, and what that process is. So that's a good question as well, too, absolutely.
yeah, because I'm just thinking, I grew up, my parents still live in on Kent Street, Lorraine Ave area. You live around that neighborhood. Those tracks go there, and when you go into the new houses that got put up there about 20 years ago, those tracks are right in people's backyard. Do they care whether the train's going 20 miles an hour or 40 miles an hour? I don't know, but I would, it certainly doesn't improve the situation if it goes, the train's traveling faster. So I don't know what recourse we have, or if this is even anything to worry about, but I'd just be curious if we did have any opportunity to kind of voice an opinion on it, what would be our options?
Yeah, no, absolutely. And there's some areas there where there are dead ends because of the rail line, but it is open. It's right there.
Yeah.
The road,
Yeah.
the dead end, and then the track is right there.
Yeah.
So certainly there's concern. So all good questions, and definitely we'll follow up and get more information.
Can I add one? Did they say how fast they're going now? They feel like
Yeah, I think around
going
10.
like molasses
Yeah,
down.
I think they're down to 10 miles an hour.
Okay.
They're going to go immediately up to 25, with November wanting to go to 40. And again, that's a good question, whether they're already approved to go to 40 once they finish the work, or if they're petitioning to go to 40. That's a good question.
I think anyone's been at those crossings, it's slow. So
Right.
I guess I'm thinking that might be a,
Yeah, and they may have other operating rules where at crossing
They
or
slow
in
down.
densely populated
Yeah,
areas,
exactly.
or bridges or those types of things.
Yeah.
You have to slow down anyways,
right.
but.
Maybe just if they could elaborate,
Yeah.
that would be great.
Yeah, at least in that situation, right, they'd have to slow down heading by the landfill, and I can't imagine that they're gonna be able to ramp up to then slow down
Right,
going
right.
over Sterling, but hopefully that's the case. I know commuter rails travel
Yeah.
fast,
Yeah.
but they're also not carrying what could possibly be hazardous material or whatnot.
No, just me.
Yeah, just people, just people.
Just precious me.
Any other thoughts, discussion, questions on that? All right.
That's helpful. So put all that together in communication to them and get back with more information.
Might as well throw in paint on the bridges too while we're.
Yeah,
Right.
that one I did ask while I had them on the phone. And,
Maybe clean up the
that was-
shrubbery.
That was a quick no, but I'll put it in the letter.
The next item, High Street sidewalk discussion. I was able to have a phone conversation with Beta Engineering. The short of it is that their team agreed to do a private walkthrough of High Street to look at some of the things that were raised, and then circle back with the town of Clinton. I would like to put forth maybe supporting having Mr. Devault, myself, Michael, Angela, Chris, and maybe Phil just discussing on like our end, what are we looking for before that conversation with Beta ever happens. So I don't know if there's any opposition to kind of brainstorming an objective and then coming back to the select board with, and even Mr. Gibbons, if, if there's any objective to it before
No, I think-
any meeting to take place, because ultimately that was one of the questions was, what's the objective for the town of Clinton? And I said, well, we haven't had that discussion at this point.
I think all I'd be looking for is, about a year ago when we started talking about this, I think we were looking at going through the defects, the cracks, and putting them into one of three buckets. Either it was something that could be blamed on the design, it was something that could be blamed on the workmanship of the pouring of the concrete, or the third bucket would just be it was just unavoidable, concrete cracks, and this was just a crack that was going to happen regardless, and there was really nothing that could be avoided with it. And I would just be looking for like every crack, at least the ones that I identified. I think there was like 64 of them. I certainly don't think every single crack is due to poor workmanship, but I think that a percentage of them probably are. And it's frustrating that, we've been, and it's no fault of Mike. He sent me a list of literally over 20 engineering, civil engineering firms or construction firms that we've reached out to or that inquired about the project. And not to oversimplify it, but it seems like the answer that we got from all of them is they're really not interested in picking apart other people's work, for lack of a better term. I don't know how else to kitchen table it more than that. I'm sure there's a fancier way that they answered that, but they're just not interested in doing that. So we're in a tough spot where we've been trying for a year to find someone that's a subject matter expert to just evaluate these sidewalks, and I'm not trying to blame anyone. I'm just saying I have reservations about it, and I want somebody that's an expert to review it and let us know, hey, maybe they come back and say, nope, everything's completely fine. But we're not able to get that. So I don't know, my fear is now we're going to have the same people that did the work review it, and no knock on them, but if you're reviewing your own work, you're going to be kind of inclined to defend yourself, and you're not really going to give an unbiased opinion of what happened. So I think that's something that they're willing to do that, but I don't know if it's worth, we've been going out to kind of established companies to try to find somebody that can evaluate the sidewalks. Do we lower that expectation and now just just ask anyone that has experience in concrete, would they be willing to be a part of this walkthrough, at least to have a voice on our side that is somewhat knowledgeable? Because like I said at multiple meetings, if these guys start talking construction lingo and stuff that none of us have experience with, I'm not going to be able to stand there and argue with them. I'm just going to have to take their word for it because I don't know anything about concrete. But if we have somebody that is knowledgeable about it, that can at least push back a little bit and say, well, no, actually, it could be due to poor workmanship because of ABC. And then, but without that, I just feel like we're just going to be flying blind on this activity. And it's better than nothing, but it's just frustrating that, because it's literally been about a year since I think I took those pictures and we first started discussing this. And it's just unfortunate that, I don't know if it's just the nature of the business, but that we can't find any subject matter expert to just unbiased, just review the sidewalks and tell us, tell me I'm crazy. I don't care. If someone does that for a line of work and they can defend that, like, everything that was done was fine, that's great. But to be at this for a year and not be able to find anyone is just, it's really frustrating, because I want most of the upgrades that were done on part of that renovation were great, and I just think this is one of them that didn't go so well. And I'm to be honest, I'm really disappointed in the oversight from the town side, and I think we owe it to the taxpayers to just review this work. I mean, it was a lot of money, and I think if things have to be repaired, I think we should be having a discussion with the company that did the work, because I have some questions, and I'd just like to get some answers on it, that's all.
I wholeheartedly agree with you, and I think that the beta at this moment was a little bit, I would say, skittish on meeting with the town of Clinton and at this point. So, which is why I had requested that they at least do a walk, and then we can, with the hope of circling back. So I think what I'm putting forward is having our team meet to figure out what's the objective and what are we willing to do. And then if Beta comes back and says, yes, we're willing to meet with you, then I think we address exactly what your concerns are, right? Finding who can we bring there to kind of help advocate. I mean, it may be Mr. McGowan, maybe, I don't know, but.
I mean, no disrespect to Chris, but he approved it. So, I mean, why would we ask him to review work that he already approved?
Well, because maybe when he approved it, there weren't cracks.
Well, yeah, but after those, we just recently, we did walkthroughs because there were spalling issues. And I know those cracks were there at the same time that we were reviewing the sidewalks for the spalling. And
right.
Why we didn't do, why does a select board member have to walk up and down High Street and take 64 separate pictures? I mean, anyone that works for the town could have done that. Like, Chris could have had someone from the DPW walk up and down High Street and just categorize all the defects that he found. So it's disappointing. I'm just disappointed in how these sidewalks have turned out, and I'm disappointed in the fact we can't find anyone to just honestly review them. And quite frankly, I'm a little, I wish there was more push to kind of get this resolved. I mean, maybe everyone else thinks that they're okay, and I'm like only a couple people are complaining about it, and we're just the crazy people, but that's just what it's starting to get to feel like. And I'm running out of steam on it too, because it just doesn't seem like it's going anywhere.
Point made. I think when Chris did the walkthrough, they only walked this block. I don't think they did they didn't do all of High Street. They did the block right out here. So, but either way, I'd like to meet with everybody and have that conversation with the hopes that we will be meeting with Beta. Yay, nay?
Yeah.
Okay. All right, next item, the ALS paramedic implementation plan update.
Okay, just following up where we are. Contract was settled with Matrix. Finance Committee approved the funding. They issued a request for information to the town, the bulk of it for the fire chief, some information to the assessors on GIS mapping, and some on benefit information that HR has put together. So at this point, they're waiting on town feedback, and then they're also looking to schedule interviews with different key personnel to try to get, a sense of what's happening in Clinton, what we're looking for. I think they are looking to speak with policymakers, so I think they would like to speak with the Select Board, the Finance Committee, or at least the chair of those two boards. And if anyone else is interested, please let me know. But they'll be doing kind of in-person interviews and trying to get the town's sense of where this is headed, and then review the data and then start putting the plan together. So their deadline is in mid to late December to have this completed. So.
Excellent. Any questions? Just one item under old and new business that relates to the Finance Committee. We had discussed creating a uniform summary budget form that will be issued to all departments. I discussed that with the Finance Committee. They were very supportive of it. They had a few things that they wanted to suggest be made a part of that form. And so I believe you were going to put together a rough draft, send it to the Finance Committee. Finance Committee would approve it on their end within, I think they were meeting within 2 weeks, and then it would come back to the Select Board.
Right. Would the board want a copy of that concurrently? Do you want me to send it to the Select Board members?
Yeah.
So you have it as well, so you, at least you know, can start reviewing it, so when the Finance Committee comes back, you'll already have the base forms anyway,
Yeah.
so.
So they'll meet next week. Do they meet next week?
Right, I think it was next week. that
Okay.
They were gonna try to get together. Yep.
Perfect, all right. Which is great, and they were also very supportive of departments having to complete that before they come before either board. So thank you for that. And then, once it's approved on our end, that will be then sent to the departments. So at least they have an idea of what's coming down the pipeline before they receive the budget request.
Right, I think the goal is just to standardize the information that departments are sending in and making sure that everyone completes every form so that, again, it's all the same. They all get the same forms, but, some people fill them out differently or, so this way we're gonna, if everyone agrees on the data collection, then everyone needs to follow that protocol. So.
And one question I had asked at that point during that meeting was if the departments receive the preliminary approval from Finance Committee, which they said that the Finance Committee did not send that to the departments. And I don't know if that's something that we would want to discuss about once it's been vetted, that if it does go back to the departments for them to be able to see prior to the public meeting, because that seemed to be when departments could go to discuss. So I don't know if.
Right, the Finance Committee is required to have a public hearing before they take their final vote on the budget, so. I mean, absolutely, if they have a document, it can be easily distributed, but I think the accountant does reach out to departments if there are any major changes. I think that she has let them know, and I know in the past, the Finance Committee Chair has talked with departments if there was some big ask that they couldn't support or only half supported or something, so there may not be a formal process where the final document is sent out to everyone, but I know any major changes are bounced off of departments. But again, that could be part of the discussion if prior to public hearing, if they have a final draft, then that's easy to be emailed out to everyone. That's easy enough, so.
Okay. Very good. Anything else under old and new business? All right. Committee reports. Are there any committee reports?
Cable Committee's going to meet tomorrow.
Excellent.
Okay.
Yep. What time is it? 7 o'clock on the Zoom.
Very good. Is there where can people find that link?
I think it's posted on the post, right? The Zoom address?
Agenda.
That's posted on the agenda?
The Zoom address is on the agenda.
Yeah.
Cool. So, on the town's website, so.
Yep.
Very good. Community announcements. The Halloween Walk, downtown Clinton's annual Halloween Walk will be held on Thursday, October 26th from 6 to 8 p.m. for trick-or-treating along High Street. Please note, dogs, bikes, and skateboards are prohibited from the event. Thank you to the Clinton businesses who are supporting this event. High Street and adjacent side streets from Union Street to Water Street will be closed from 5 to 8 p.m. Follow Discover Clinton on Facebook for more updates. Open Space Plan Community Survey. The Open Space and Recreation Plan Committee is seeking input from the community by taking an online survey due by October 27th that can be accessed on the town website at clintonma.gov. That's clintonma.gov under the current news section. Surveys are available in English, Spanish, and Portuguese. Save the date for an open space and recreation plan public forum that will be held on Thursday, November 9th at 7 p.m. in Clinton Town Hall to allow further input on the updated plan. One other thing that I'd like to add into this is extending a congratulations to the Clinton High School field hockey team. They finished up their regular season play 16-0.
Yep.
16-0. They had an undefeated season. On Monday, they will be playing their first game in the Central Massachusetts Athletic Directors Tournament. I don't know if that's been determined. They did get a home game.
Yep, a home game Monday at 5:30 in Clinton.
So come on out Monday night, 5:30 at Veterans Complex to support the Clinton High School field hockey team. They broke the previous record. I think the previous record was 13 wins.
Yeah, yeah.
And,
And they clinched their league championship as well the night before, so.
back-to-back league
Yeah.
champs.
Yeah.
Them in tennis. Very good. All right. Anything else anybody wants to plug? Very good. Our next, so do you want to talk about the schedule right now, Michael?
Sure.
All right, so before we close, November has 5 Fridays. Oh, yeah, there we go. Has 5 Wednesdays.
That's great.
Wednesdays. I'm ready for Friday, but 5 Wednesdays. And we need to do the tax rate hearing.
Right, the assessors had just inquired about the upcoming meeting scheduled in order to start planning for the tax classification hearing. It's usually the first Wednesday in November that we've been doing it the last couple of years.
December.
But there are 5 Wednesdays in November, so, in December, yeah, first Wednesday in December. But since there's 5 Wednesdays, I don't know if the board was going to meet in 2 weeks again to do it then, or do it in December, so.
Perfect. I'd like to propose that we meet on November 1st, November 15th, and November 29th, which is when we could do that meeting. And then we meet on December 13th. And then we break to the new year. And then January 3rd is the first Wednesday of that month. So we essentially will still be meeting on that 2-week cycle, but we'll have 2 weeks off around the holidays. So I don't know what the board's thoughts are. So November 1st, November 15th, November 29th, December 13th, and then January 3rd, we would resume our schedule, which there's actually 5 Wednesdays in January as well. So we'd go the 3rd, 17th, and then we wouldn't meet until February 7th unless we decide to meet at the end.
So then just tentatively, then the tax classification hearing will be on November 29th. So,
Yeah.
thank you.
And I had just requested that if we could get that documentation, the report, prior to that evening, so whether it's electronic or hard copy. Outside of that, I will accept a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second?
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Thank you very much.